Welcome. My name is Dr. Eric Woodroof, and I am very excited to present this to you. This is the first on-demand, full-length recording of the Certified Energy Manager program. Normally in a live class, we'd start right off with saying, how many of you know the passing rate of this test? And most people don't know this, but the passing rate of this test is between 70 and 80%. It's been that way for decades. And I've trained tens of thousands of people in this program and a few others as well. And what I want to emphasize is it's not easy. This is a challenging exam. So we hope that you pay attention. We hope you engage this as much as you can, and we hope that you pass. Now, you have some advantages. Being on demand, I mean, you can pause, you can watch something over and over again, you can skip ahead if you already know a topic. I wouldn't recommend that because myself and the other instructors have been involved with this program for decades, and we have given you practice problems and other things that we think are probably going to be on the exam. We don't really know, but many of us have written parts of CEM exams in the past. So we have a pretty good idea of what's important, and we're going to try to translate that to you in this program. So I'm excited to have you here. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and lose my coat. Normally we would do introductions as part of the class, but obviously we're in a different world now, and this is an on-demand program, so we don't have to worry about that. But as for me, I'm a Ph.D. pretty much in this topic. I've spent my whole career doing this. You're going to learn about the other instructors, and you can always Google us as well. But I'm really in it to help you guys get ready for this exam, and hopefully, whether or not you pass this test, I'm really passionate that you learn something here and you can go save some energy, because that's really what's important. Along the way, you're going to meet wonderful people, people that you can, build projects with, people you can do things with, maybe write papers, who knows. But it's a very fun career, and I'm looking forward to sharing you what I've learned and mistakes I've made, and you hear this from other instructors as well. So we would normally jump into section 1.1, and which is basically an overview. There's a few logistical slides here, copyright, who cares? And we're going to jump into some other things. Just forget about the safety. I mean, I'm hoping that you, wherever you're watching this, can find your own bathroom and find your own exit out of your house. So we don't want to take that too not seriously, but we kind of assume that in this world. In a live course, we of course would talk about engagement, and normally we would be able to engage you with some type of screen share. You're just going to have to do it on your own. If you're falling asleep, you're going to have to wake yourself up, and I can't emphasize that enough. We'll try to do some jokes, but again, you're dealing with a PhD here. Jokes aren't my strong suit, but we will try to engage you as much as possible. So what I want to talk about in this opening section is just a little bit about the Association of Energy Engineers, a little bit about what the CEM program is. We'll talk about how it can be a career development roadmap for you, kind of a place to get started and go other places, or go farther in your own energy management. We'll talk about training goals. We'll talk about the workbook and course schedule. That's really where we'll spend most of the time in this section right here. And we'll give you some exam tips and also share with you some supplemental training. So I hope you're ready. This is going to be fun. We've got a lot of material to cover. Right off the bat, I just want to tell you that AEE has been around. This program has been around for decades, and it's been successful for a lot of reasons. But just see, if you didn't know this, there are over 100 countries have people that have taken the CEM program. It's widely accepted worldwide. It'll probably help you get a raise. I mean, and if you just do this program, you're probably going to be more marketable, and you'll probably save your company lots and lots of money. Another thing I'll say is that you're kind of special. You're an energy manager. You care about saving energy. There aren't a lot of people like you, and with the AE network, you can find other people that have that same passion, because this probably doesn't, if you talk to the HR person, they've got their own challenges. The CEO's got their own challenges, but this is a group of people that has a very similar mindset. So that probably will be useful to you as well. So another minor point is that the CEM is accepted in many places around the world. In the last 10 years has grown significantly in recognition, and a lot of the new CEMs are actually overseas. So just there's a worldwide acceptance of this, and I'll mention a few that are pretty relevant. That the CEM program was the first ANSI accredited program, officially endorsed by the DOE and the Better Buildings program. So those are some differentiators. Just again, if you get this and pass this test, you're probably going to get a raise and may open some other doors for you as well. So I don't want to dwell on this too much, but if you go to the website link there, that's or you just Google it, you'll find that there's a lot of recognition for CEM. Many employers require it anyway. And if you want to feel better about yourself, I've taught this in some countries where if you didn't pass the test, not only did you lose your job, but you also had to pay for, they wouldn't reimburse you for the training that you just, that your company just paid for. They wouldn't let you do that. You would have to pay for it and you'd lose your job. So hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better about, what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. But I can tell you, I haven't met many people who've been disappointed with the doors that were opened with their CEM if they were interested in energy management. Now, of course, some of you may get promoted to vice president of finance or something, and maybe energy management becomes, in your rear window, and that's okay too. We understand that. But these are the types of people that typically come to the CEM program. If we were in a live audience, I'm sure many of these titles would be represented in the class. Utility people, facility managers, of course, energy managers, but also maintenance managers, ESCO people, project engineers, consultants, and quite a lot more of consultants in the last 10 years. These are other folks called resource efficiency managers, or people who are on-site designed, and their whole mission is to save money on a facility, often a military base or something like that. And also sustainability managers, carbon reduction managers, these types of people, because these are positions whereby the work that you do as a certified energy manager in saving energy directly helps the sustainability manager. Also, you can help the marketing manager, the HR people, the PR people, the people who are engaged in trying to attract employees to a company and retain those employees. Same thing with a college. That's one of the main reasons why so many colleges are on the front end of sustainability, because they know they have to do that if they want to attract the best people. So the reason I say this is if I'm a CFO and you're an energy manager and you come to me and present a project, I might approve it. But if the energy manager and the sustainability manager and the finance person all come to me, more likely than not, I'm going to approve it. So these are things worth thinking about as you go through your career. How can you use your CEM to get involved with other people? But back to this program, I mean, this is what you're here for. And I'll just say, we call the CEM as somewhat of a license to learn. You can start with the CEM. We're going to cover a tremendous amount of material, everything from lighting to air conditioning to chillers, boilers, motors, all of these systems. And, some of those might be exciting to you, some might not. And what's neat about this is you can start here. And if you want to go maybe more into lighting, there's other certifications you can get in lighting. If you want to do more in sustainability, there's things you can do there. If you want to do more in financing, there's lots you can do there. So lots of different things you can do to further on. Sometimes the career path is opposite. Sometimes we have lighting professionals come take the CEM, or I have many managers come and take the CEM because they want to be able to talk intelligently to their vendors or to their own staff. So anyway, there's a lot of possibilities here. And what I'm saying is that we're covering a lot of material, very overview style, and you may choose to go into more detail. Whatever I would say, pursue what you enjoy. That's probably the most important thing. You can't be the best at something unless you actually enjoy what you're doing. So some of you are taking this program, probably going to take an exam, and that's great. We want you to pass. We're going to do a lot of exercises to help you understand energy management to the level you could probably pass that test. But our real goal here is a few things: to raise the professional standards of those engaged in energy management. So if you say you're an energy manager and you're a CEM, that means you pass this test. That means you know something and you've proven you've known something. Most importantly to me personally, not that it matters, just one person, is the central thing here, is to provide practical, cost-effective ideas that can save energy and money. That's why this program has been so successful for decades, because if you're an employer and you send people to this program, they're going to come back with ideas, they're going to save you money. And I can tell you some of these ideas are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you pay whatever it costs to go to a course, you get that returned 20 times over, literally in the first year. That's a very common phenomenon. And you can look at references for that. But if you're a professional, you also are gaining incredible valuable skill set that's applicable, whether you're with your current employer or a different employer or a consultant. But ultimately, if you're saving money and saving energy, that's a win-win that helps society. And we are focused on doing practical things. We're not going to talk about things that take 35 years to pay back. We're talking about things that you can walk out of this class and generally implement the next week. Okay, there'll be a few exceptions, but most of the ideas are commercially cost effective now. Okay. Third goal, again, is to help you understand some of the relationships and, of course, prepare for the exam. But there's a lot of relationships, you know, if you might not want to do the financing, you know, calculations that we're going to throw at you in this class. But if you ever had to pick apart a financial calculator, you would need to understand those relationships. If you ever had to pick apart a variable speed drive software and make sure they're not, you know, making sure they're telling you the truth, you would need to understand the relationships. If you needed to understand, you know, the effect of oxygen on boiler combustion, we're going to show you the relationships so you can better understand the software, better ask smarter questions to vendors to make sure they're telling you the truth and you're not getting you know, lied to. So those are things that we're going to be covering as well. But those are the overall training goals. You see, everything we do is focused trying to accomplish those things. Ultimately, we feel that CEM should be able to discuss energy supplies, purchasing, you know, how to get better deals on energy. You know, if gas is cheap and electricity expensive, maybe you make some decisions there that affect your bottom line. Second thing, understand energy related terms. There's a lot of vocabulary here. We're going to be covering a lot of it in the beginning of every single section that we cover in this book and in this course. And then also, of course, being able to conduct audits, that's a bad word, but we use the word survey, conduct surveys and present cost-effective improvement ideas. You know, that's really important that you can present these things because they are fantastic investments, and being able to do that is very important. Be able to go into facility, identify opportunities, come back and present. We can't help you much with the presenting part, but we can definitely help you with the auditing part. And then, of course, you're a manager as a CEM. You don't know. It's impossible to know everything about this. That's why we have multiple instructors teaching this. But you'll reach a point where you can't know everything. You got to get help. Maybe you're an expert in boilers, but you're not an expert in solar. So you go find help with that. And I would say if this was a live class, you know, you'd have the opportunity to ask questions, you'd have the opportunity to see other people. There is value in that. And you can go to meetings and go to chapter meetings and get that as well in the Association of Energy Engineers or in other associations, you know, whatever is in your available area, to get help in areas that aren't your strength. So those are things I would say, you know, knowing when you need to get help is important as well. Okay, so those are some other things we want you to do. As far as the workbook goes, we feel it's a pretty valuable tool. I'm a little bit biased because I'm the lead editor, so just have to take that with a grain of salt right there. But here's the three main lead content creators for the US version of the CEM course. Myself, Eric Woodroof, Tim Janos, and Richard Costello. There's our pictures. You'll see us throughout the program, and we're happy to help you. We really want to see you be successful. We really want to see you save a lot of energy. That's really in our hearts. We've all known this. We've known each other for 20 plus years. So I know this about these people, and I can say the same for the other people on your screen right now who've contributed, edited, provided questions and answers and quiz answers. Fantastic resources around the world. Again, I've known all these people for about 20 years too. So some wonderful resources there. And I'll say internationally, we have, again, fantastic resources. A lot of these people are teaching this internationally with international units and doing a fantastic job at that. So my heart goes out to all these people who've tried to create something literally, I mean, I could just say decades of experience piled into this material to help you accelerate your career and do more. So, you know, you just have an incredible resource there. Now, we have to acknowledge some people who created the program. My PhD mentor, Wayne Turner, and Barney Capehart co-created this program a long time ago, and Dr. Warren Heffington, who recently retired. We would call these people emeritus because they'll always be remembered as doing wonderful things for energy management. So that is the accreditation part. Now we're going to talk about the workbook. So the workbook is, you know, organized in a way that flows from, you know, I say simple to complex, but also from, you know, where the energy is produced, like as it comes to you from the utility. Okay, we won't go as far as the coal plant usually, but where the electricity enters your facility and how it flows through your building and gets used by lights or motors or these types of devices. That's what we're going to be talking about as we go through the workbook. You'll find every subject is organized pretty much as the energy would flow through the building. And within each section, We have learning objectives. We will tell you what we think is the most important piece that you should, maybe some part of it will be, we want you to be aware of something, like understand a vocabulary term, be able to understand conceptually what's going on. But if we say ability to, that historically means it's probably has been or could be on the exam. I say this with a fair amount of experience because I've co-written or been part of writing 7 CEM exams. I know something about this. And the other instructors have also contributed many questions to the CEM exam. We do not know what's on your current exam, but we have a pretty good idea of what they want you to be able to do in general. It may not always be right, but in generally, if you see this ability to do, you should make sure you know how to do those problems and know how to do the answers. At the end of every section, maybe a few exceptions here, but at the end of every section, there will be a quiz. And the quiz, we don't provide the answers right away to you. We want you to work the problem as opposed to just flipping the page and looking at the answer, because I'm this kind of learner. I'd say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Perfect. I would have done that. No. What we're going to make you do, and this is hard to do in a recorded session because I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, please work the problems. Practice strengthening your muscles in this material. You're only going to be good at the test if you can actually use those muscles and solve problems. So we'd like to present you quiz problems. We'd like to pause the recording. You work the problems. When you're done or get stuck, unpause the recording. We'll go through the answers. And this will always be at the end of the section. A few exceptions. We have quiz questions in the middle, but most of them will be at the end of a section. Quiz questions, pause, look at the answers, and we'll share that with you. And we'll go through every single answer. Whenever you see blue italicized text, that means we're giving you a little bit of extra information, not necessarily for the exam. Maybe it's just if you want to go further in researching something, you have that material laid out for you there in blue italicized text. If you see red underlined text, that basically is trying to clue you in that we're doing a multiple step problem, a problem that may take several slides to get through, and we'll have step A, step B, step C, 1, 2, 3, and they may be spread out over 10 slides. But that red underlined text will help you keep focused. Okay, where am I at in solving this problem? We also could use it in some type of action. Take action, red usually encourages people to pay attention. So we always want this workbook to be better, and we've integrated, I'm not kidding, thousands of recommendations, and that's just in the last couple of years. So we always want to make it better. Your experience, your advice on making it better, we value that. So please send that to me, and you can find my email on the previous slides in your workbook, okay? Schedule. Now, for you, you can do this all in one day if you wanted to. You binge watch or Netflix style, whatever. I wouldn't recommend that. This is the schedule that we know works pretty well. You can only pay attention so long on a screen anyway, so you're gonna have to take breaks. But I wanted to share with you the typical schedule we would roll this out, one that has resulted in most people passing the exam, okay? And the schedule is like this. We have some introduction, but basically that's what we're doing right now, this introduction section, and then section 1.2 is this one, which is why should you care about energy management, and some global trends are in there. But basically there'll be a pretty big section called 1.3, and that's energy basics. That's going to talk about units, and then purchasing energy, different ways, different units, purchasing gas, purchasing electricity, get into some bill analysis, that kind of thing. That's important for you to understand. That really is a fundamental foundation that we're going to build on throughout the rest of the class. So you have to understand the difference between power and energy. There are differences there. We want you to make sure you understand. That section may take some time. It may take you 2 hours to get through it on the recording. In the class, because of breaks and things, it goes sometimes even past lunch. So that's a pretty significant section. That's 1.3, energy basics, energy supply. After that, we would do audits. Energy audits, you might call them energy surveys, whatever you want to call them, energy diagnostics, but we would do that, and instrumentation. So this is 1.4 and 1.5. Those are the section titles for that. 1.6 is codes and standards. That's a section that is, I'll just say, difficult because codes are different every part of the world. But we give you some basics understanding why is it important to energy managers. Some of that information may affect how you do energy audits, just to go back to section 1.4 and elaborate on that. We're going to talk about level 1, level 2, level 3. We'll talk about investment grade audits. We're going to cover a lot of material there, and how to do an energy audit based on, again, decades of experience. It's always going to be different when you audit different types of facilities, but we're trying to just give you some general good things to do there and some things not to do. And coupled with that will be the instrumentation piece, because we just want to show you what a flow meter looks like, what a BTU meter looks like, things like that, just to give you some real light meters, etc. Finally, the final section for the first day, 1.7, is high performance green buildings. And technically, there's not an exam section called that, but we cover it because it's kind of a, it's an important piece, and some of the vocabulary may be relevant to your test, and just in the world it generally creates projects. So we think that's important for you to cover, and we want to make sure you've got that as well. So that's how we would do day one. And I should mention that the workbook is organized. You'll notice all these sections. So day two, all the sections will be like section 2.1. That would be energy economy. Section 2.2 is power systems. And so the day is the first digit, 2, and then dot. The second is the order of the section. So energy accounting, we would do the first thing on the second day. The reason I say that is for you people who are watching the recording, you want to hit this when you're fresh, because we're going to cover basically an entire college semester of material in about 2 hours. So, you want to make sure you understand everything about net present value, time value money, life cycle costing, and basically moving money through time. We're going to do all that in that section. So you might choose to do that one when you're most awake in the day. There'll be a fair amount of math with that one. Electrical power systems, basically going through things like power factor, KVA, relationships, the power factor triangle, that sort of thing. That's section 2.2. 2.3 is motors and drives. Motors are the most energy intensive appliance, by population in the world. There's more energy gets used in motors than any other machine, if you count refrigerators and everything like that. So that's pretty important. We're going to cover that, as well as variable speed drives in section 2.3. So you've got that to look at as well. And then 2.4 is lighting, okay? And we're breaking into the sections. What's happening is, as we move from day one to day two, we've got the fundamentals complete in day one, and day two, we start moving into specific appliances, specific type of machines. And we found it easy to start with motors and lighting because they're electric, they're pretty easy to understand. And as we get into day 2 and 3, you'll see the systems become more complicated. So lighting systems, we're going to talk about CRI, color rendering index, all of these things that vocabulary and common knowledge of lighting systems will be covered there. Fair amount of examples as well, because it's a very exciting topic that changes quite a bit. And then maintenance section is 2.5, and that wraps up day 2. Maintenance, if I were to do an energy audit, the first thing I would go after is maintenance, because maintenance has usually huge savings opportunities with minimal capital investment. Commissioning also, and I would also say commissioning controls and optimization and fixing errors, that kind of thing. All of those kinds of things are easy fixes, save lots of money, and you don't even need to believe me. You can go look at, and we'll talk about this industrial section. There's resources and references that talk about how maintenance has the fastest payback. So that's why we put it relatively early in the course. And so we'll blend in that part, and then we go on to day 3. Guess what? Section 3.1 is HVAC. So HVAC, we start moving from electrical now to mechanical systems. You're going to see units, BTU per hour, that sort of thing. That will weave right into section 3.2, which is building envelope. Not necessarily critical to the energy manager who's retrofitting a lot of buildings, because a building envelope has a lot of decisions that are best made when the building is built the first time, but we're covering it anyway so you can understand those relationships, some insulation lookup tables, things like that. Building automation and controls is section 3.3. If I were doing energy audits, that's the second thing I would go after, because if you can fix controls, you can save a lot of energy. So that's important. I'd say fixing controls, like if you got Parkinson's, you fix the Parkinson's, everything else is easier to drink, easier to do a clicker or whatever you're doing today. So controls, you fix those, a lot of the other energy savings in a building will be much easier to do, okay? 3.4, and notice we're only doing 4 sections on day 3 as well, is thermal energy storage. I think you'll really enjoy this section. Some really interesting ideas for saving money, and also some new technology like phase change materials that I think are very applicable, very cost effective, and very useful all around the world. So that is something we round out day 3 with. Now, normally in a live class, we would stop a little bit early on day 3 and do practice Q&A. You do not have that opportunity because we're not doing this real time with you. But there are opportunities for you to get your questions answered. And so you have that ability. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is we spend some time, an hour and a half, answering questions, and not everyone shows up, but people who need the help get the help there. So make sure you allow yourself time to practice problems at the end of every day or at the end of every module, however you want to do it. But make sure you can do the problems that we're going to throw at you, and we've got lots of practice problems we're going to throw at you as well. Okay. So day 3 ends, and then day 4 we kick off again with a heavy section called boiler systems. I would say relative to HVAC, you'll find this quite easy. At least some parts of it are much easier, but it can be a little intimidating if you've never seen a boiler before, don't know what a desuperheater is, those kinds of things. We'll be covering all that stuff as well. So this is 4.1. 4.2 is combined heat and power systems and renewable energy. Again, very much a growth area, exciting. Kind of left that toward the end of the class to keep you guys awake and hopefully make it interesting for you. Industrial systems, probably some of the harder questions on our whole training program are in there. We again left that towards the end because we wanted to, build up to it and give you some challenges there. We'll talk about compressor systems. We'll talk about, industrial waste heat recovery, things like that. And then the last section is energy savings performance contracting. That's section 4.4. That's the last training module. That's kind of important because, we can have all these wonderful ideas, but if you don't have the money to implement any of the ideas, nothing gets done. And so financing, performance contracting, very, very important topic, might be the only way you can get something done. So we have that in there. We want to make sure you get that information. It may help you overcome the biggest barrier in your energy management, getting projects done. And we talk about M&V and performance contracting as well. So, and again, at the end of that day, we would do practice problems. So make sure you allocate time to do the problems for yourself. That's really important. Whenever you do take the exam, okay, we call it day 5, but for you, it could be any time, and then that's true for anyone taking it online. There are a few things here that may not be relevant for you, so let me switch on to the next. So we have we have a version here that's if you have to do this online, of course, picture ID and a proctor administers them. That's all done online now, so this is not necessarily as relevant. But what I want to talk to you about is there are some extra resources for you before you take that test, and we'll be referencing these all throughout the entire program. So I'd like you to pause the recording and take a look at Appendix A, B, and C. Right now, go ahead and push pause. I think you'll find this very useful. So let me tell you why. Appendix A has sample equations and full-size tables and charts. If there's any part in this slide deck that we're going through, which is PowerPoint, if there's a slide that has a chart in it and you can't see the numbers, you can always go to Appendix A because you'll have full-size tables and charts, full page. So that might be very useful to you throughout the training and throughout when you practice problems. It might be a lot easier to look at a Sacramento chart with full page. So we want to make sure you have that available. The beginning of Appendix A has sample equations, which are it's kind of a starter list of equations. I would say and I always say this, how many of you, and I'll do this with you too, how many of you would like a test tip? And I'm hoping you're raising your hand because I found it to be higher passing rates if you make your own equation sheet. Take the one we've given you as a sample, but write it down, rewrite all the equations by section. So HVAC equations, lighting questions, boiler questions and answers, not questions, but equations. And write those equations down by section, maybe in multiple colors. The more kinesthetically involved you are in creating your own equation sheet, the better you're going to remember that. And that's just learning because you're going to forget about 70% of everything that I tell you and other instructors tell you in the next week. So if you write it down in your own notes, you're much better, more likely to access the information quickly. And I'll tell you this, we haven't got to the test tips part of the material yet, but I'll tell you, time is the biggest problem with this exam. It's 4 hours of go, go, go. The faster you can find the equation you need, the better off you're going to be. Okay, and we'll cover a little more about that in a few minutes. Appendix B and C, I'm going to do with screen, just show you. Appendix B is sample problems. We give you problems by section for everything we cover, and they're exact same section titles as the exam. And then Appendix C is the solutions to those problems. So these are some screenshots of Appendix B and C. So you can see Appendix B here has, by section, fuel supply, codes and standards, maintenance, HVAC, lighting, all of these systems all of these sections are laid out there. And it's pretty much the same exact section titles as the exam. So you have a great resource to practice the problems. And also, I'll tell you on the exam, they're organized by section just like this. You'll do all the lighting questions, then you do all the HVAC questions, then et cetera, et cetera. I can't emphasize this enough. Do the practice work. There's probably over 100 practice problems there for you to work, in your own time. And Appendix C has the solutions to those answers, and they're written out step by step, mostly step by step, to give you understanding of how the math was done. So that should help you tremendously in getting ready for this test, and also just understanding how to do various problems. So those are great resources. I can't emphasize. You just have to do the work. There's just no way you can really do well on this test if you don't practice the problems. So the exam is a 4-hour testing environment. Nothing about that's changed in 20 years. It's open book, open notes. And there's a couple of weird things you'll hear on the internet. You can only have 2 pages of scrap paper. There's some rules we're trying to get fixed there that may not be helpful. But I will tell you this, no matter what the proctor tells you on the online exam, or however you take this, it is doable. Lots of people have passed this test. There's nothing technical that has stopped anyone from passing, as far as I know. It's all solvable problems. And you just need to remember that it's a multiple choice test, A, B, C, D, or E. All the questions are equally weighted. So let me say this a different way. They're worth the same amount of points. Do not spend 25 minutes on one problem. You could probably solve 10 other problems and get 10 points. I'll just call them points for now. Get 10 questions answered in the same time you would have spent on one. And in that scenario, you would have gotten 10 questions answered, possibly 9 or 10 right, versus getting one. So focus your attention on this small test tip is time management. You have to recognize if a problem is going to take you more than 4 minutes or something, skip it and come back to it later. You can do your test however you want. I'm just giving you these test tips have resulted in people scoring actually better. And so it's up to you if you want to take that advice. Another piece of information that's a little confusing to a lot of people, so we'll cover it here, is the test is always under improvement. They're always trying to make it better. So there's 10 questions that are somewhat like sample questions. They're questions that aren't going to be scored. They're questions that are basically trial questions for the exam writing team. And so you won't know what those are. You still have to answer 130 questions. So somewhat irrelevant from your perspective. You're just going to do 130 questions, go. But 10 of them aren't going to be graded. You don't know which ones they are, so you have to treat them all like everything matters. But it will show up weird when the percentages will be graded on 120, not 130. So that's why the percentages will be maybe a little confusing to you. We get that question a lot, so I thought I'd bring it up here. And again, if you haven't registered yet, registering for your exam is pretty easy, especially online. You can get it registered. You can take it multiple times during the day. That's something that's very nice. So don't pay attention for you online people. That's not so relevant to you. As I mentioned before, the test is organized by section, and this is a very handy page. We have this term called earmark. You might earmark this page, fold the flap or whatever. And I'll say that frequently. I think you'll find the other instructors say it often, that this could be very important for you to know what percent of the exam is the section. Maybe you don't want to spend all your time on boilers if it's only 3 to 5% of the exam. So structure your study time according to first where you're struggling. You might want to study more there, but keep in mind, if you're struggling with building envelope again, maybe don't become an expert in that. Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's better for you to focus on some other sections that have larger percentages of the exam. That might be a better use of your time. Okay. The BOK topics, that's what this is, body of knowledge. Body knowledge topics are similar to the sections in the workbook. So you're going to see very similar, if not exactly the same, exam sections in your test. So hopefully that'll help you. Now, in-person exam, there's some rules here, not relevant to you, so do not worry about that. But for online exam, there's, and these website links might change, but basically, to answer some questions that we typically get is that the proctor, when you get in the situation, the proctor is going to have a little software thing. It's going to come onto your computer, and it's, I forgot the word, applet or module, and it will basically take control of your computer, so you can't go to Google and get answers. You can't text. It can only let you do this exam. So be prepared for that. And there's a bunch of, is your system compatible? Is your system big enough, good enough memory-wise to handle that? All that will be made available to you before the test. Another question that comes up is, on a written test, you can always like, flip the page, mark the, circle it and come back to it later. You can flag questions and skip them and come back, and you'll see that in the process of going through the exam, which makes it going back in the exam quite easy. So no, you can do that. Just know that that is possible, okay? And you will get your results immediately, which is a huge advantage. It used to take a month for paper tests, and now you get your results immediately. They're not official, but you will get them immediately, and you probably know whether you failed or passed. I used to tell people whenever they take a 4-hour test, they're going to feel terrible. This won't be the case for you. You'll take the test, you'll know exactly if you passed or failed, and you won't have to wait and have all that anxiety. So that's probably good for your health, not to have to deal with that. Preparation. So I can't emphasize enough, I think I already did, is just practice, practice, practice. It's the best way to understand the flavor of the problems you're going to get, the way instructors write the questions. There are lots of practice problems in Appendix B. It's up to you to do them. As I mentioned before, earmark, mark, or highlight your workbook. Often there'll be, Post-it note type things you can paste. Some people end up with a workbook that looks like a rainbow because they've got so many little, Post-it notes on there. That's a great way to be able to find the information quickly. I can't emphasize the speed of the test is really important. You have to be able to get the information quickly and get the right equation, solve the problem, and then move on. And I mentioned before, make your own equation sheet. Can't emphasize that enough. It really results in probably 8 to 10% better performance on an exam. So that's some data that I have. Now, you won't have the ability to form a study group, but there are opportunities for you to get your questions answered. And I'll be honest with you, in a live course, probably only about 60% of the people ever speak up in a live course or even a webinar course. A lot of people are just in the background. They're there to get the information. They're not comfortable talking in front of groups or whatever. That's okay. That's why you're probably here. And that's fine too. You don't have the ability to have a study group, but you do have other resources to reach out and, get help. There's ways to do that. So don't be discouraged by that. And again, if you're one of the people that doesn't speak in the class, you're not missing much anyway. So a couple of things you do need. You need a traditional calculator, what that might look like. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be something like this, something that has plus, minus, divide, subtract, and square root is helpful. Exponents are helpful too. That's all you need. And you can get by without a lot of that stuff. You could do a $10 calculator and plus, minus, divide, and you'd be in good shape there, multiply. But if I were you, maybe I would buy a financial calculator, because that gives me the ability to check my financial work very quickly. I have a financial calculator, and what it does is it has these numbers at the top, or letters. So it's, N, net present value, interest, whatever, payment, future value, has all these things, and you can punch in the interest and get your answers very quickly. So that can be useful to you as well. Now, on the exam, I mentioned before, managing your time. Do not spend too much time on a problem. Move on. Skip, whatever you want to say that, move on. Just keep going and come back to the hard ones. That's the best way you can take this test. Many people have failed this test because they didn't manage their time, then they got all nervous and they lost their composure and couldn't move on. If you get to a tough problem, skip it, move on. Best way to do it. So that hopefully will help you. I, again, can't emphasize that enough either. So once you pass this test, you assuming you have the background and met all the criteria, there's an application you need to fill in, and that's something that's important and taken seriously by the association. You can take this class, that's great, but you still have to fill in the application and pass the test. Those are different things. If you do those things, wonderful. Maintaining certification is pretty easy. Just like if you're a medical doctor, you've got to do continuing education credits. Make sure you're staying current. Every 3 years, you need to prove that you've done some continuing education credits. Maybe you've attended a conference, maybe you've written some papers, maybe you've served on a board, maybe you've attended some online training somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. You can look at the categories, pretty easy to do. It doesn't all have to be AEE stuff. It could be USGBC or others, and all of those associations take AE credits, and it's kind of a lot of different places you can get your training. But you need to do that. And if for whatever reason, I'll say this in this italicized here, if you don't have the experience required, for it to become a CEM, like 3 years and a college degree, if you don't have that or you don't have the right mix, don't worry. You can still take the test, pass the test, and become what's called an energy manager in training. That's what the EMIT means. And that basically means you pass this test, which is a formidable task. And I have hired EMITs all the time. I think they're wonderful. They can be very bright. And they just don't have the experience yet. That's okay. They can get that. And as soon as you get if you are an EMIT, you've passed the test. As soon as you obtain the experience that you need, then you become a CEM. So that's a pathway for you as well, even if you're new to this, and that's okay. And we have a lot of people in the class now, and they're new to this. They've never, what's a motor? They've never seen one. That's okay. We can help you get there. So another way, to keep yourself current once you're certified, we have this course, we call it the annual update for CEMs. And that's a course that's offered obviously once a year. And it's done, this year was done virtually, but typically it's done in a live setting. It can be done both. But basically that's a way where we update all the CEMs on, well, I should say everyone who comes to class, we give them an update on new materials. We give them hot topics, new technologies, new ideas, faster paybacks, things like that. And that's something to do. I would not do it every year. I would maybe say every 3 years you might come to that one, because the material will be updated on that schedule. Okay, we don't expect all 20,000 CEMs to come to the annual update course every year. It'd be pretty difficult to run. So, but every 3 years, it might be something that's useful for you to get your CEUs. Also, again, be around a group that actually cares about saving energy, because I can't emphasize this enough in your career. You just find people, you may be married to them. You may know your kids don't care about energy management that maybe you do. It's just you're very special. The way you and me and the other people in this field that actually care about energy management, we're kind of a very small set of people. And so by taking these courses, the annual update in particular, you're around a bunch of other CEMs who've already passed their tests. They're a lot more relaxed. There's a whole element there of networking and fun that you might not get to experience when you're under the pressure of taking an exam. So that's some fun stuff about that. Now, we have a couple slides here at the end to talk about supplemental training, because these are extra resources. They're totally free, and they're on the website at AEE to help you. Basically, there's videos, there's extra quiz questions with answers drawn out. I did that one myself. It's 25 quiz questions, and the answers are done step by step, so you can literally look at the answers and go through it as slow as you want to. And again, I'm kind of a slow thinker myself, so it takes me, I do it step by step. You may be able to skip some steps. There's also more resources here on this website. Now that website may change, websites do change, but if you Google CEM resources, you're probably going to end up in the right place. For example, this is if you search for CEM resources today, you'd end up in a site that says CEM resources and study guide, and you'll find there's reference books here. I'll tell you, I would not worry about buying any more books. The workbook that comes with the CEM program, the one that you're probably writing in, the one I'm telling you to earmark all the time, that is usually sufficient for people to pass this exam. The study guide, BOK is there, body of knowledge. This is the CEM questions I've mentioned. That's an extra 25 practice questions. You can find that on the internet. I wrote that several years ago, but they're all still pretty relevant. And then there's some reference documents. I wouldn't stress much. Again, references and books, you don't need those to pass this test, but it's nice to have extra resources in your library. And then we have, training providers, remote center, but the helpful videos also very, very useful. So I'd say the ones that are circled in red in your workbook already are probably where you want to focus your time. And just to give you an example of what that might look like, these are the videos. There's videos on audits, there's videos on units, there's videos on lighting, motors, boilers, steam systems, energy bill analysis, and net present value. The first two are about net present value. And these are short videos. They're one's like 4 minutes, one's like 8 minutes. Most are under 10. And so it's very quick. I made these a few years ago, and we even took out the breaths and extra ums that I'm always saying. So you'll find it to be very, very efficient way to get a concept or a key learning point, and it's linked up with this training as a free resource, so you have that at your disposal. Okay, just to give you an example of what that might look like, these, it's white pages, and I'm walking through concepts the same way we'll do it in the course, but maybe you want to hear a different explanation, and I'll just play a little bit of this.
What would the value of that be in today's dollars? In other words, what would the P or P positive be? So in this case,
so that's an example of a net present value. We're showing them how to move money through time and move money back in time and do an estimation of the present value. Those kinds of 4-minute videos on how to do that concept, what the steps are all, you know, free and available to you through those videos. So that might be useful to you. The 25-question test I mentioned, again, practice. You already have Appendix B, but this is extra, even more, because people always want more questions for some reason. You know, we'll give you a question and then the answers are written out in PDF in blue, with the answers are in blue, step by step, trying to help you master these concepts. So hopefully that information has helped you. And as I mentioned, at the end of every section, you'll have a review. You know, basically in this particular section, it was pretty basic. We covered introduction, we talked about career roadmaps, we talked about training goals, we talked about the course workbook, the schedule, which I'd recommend you to somewhat follow. Do what you ever want to do, but just know what we typically follow for a successful result. And then we give you lots of tips there and supplemental training. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and we're going to see you in the next section. So get ready for 1.2.